Testing, one, two, three. I am not editing this video. So I wanted to make a part two of the things I learned about black men from roster dating. I forgot to share some details and stuff, and plus, you guys really liked that. So I'm just gonna make some more shit talking streams where I kind of discuss the nuances of, I don't know, my experiences with like the black community. So one thing that I forgot to say is that when I made that stream, I've only been around, I guess you could call it like the bougie black class. So I'm not saying that I've never been around like thugs and people from the hood, but when I made that stream and just in general, I've mainly been around kind of the more upwardly mobile to middle class black community. So when I was a kid, I actually went to a private school. It was a majority black private school, actually. It was very rare. It wasn't in my hometown, it was in like one of the main cities. It was one of those college prep schools. And I would say that's about as close to the hood that I've ever like been. But even at that school, those kids were considered to be very upwardly mobile. But one pattern that I started to notice, even from elementary school, I told a story time about how people would pedestalize the adults at that school. They would pedestalize um, my hair and stuff like that, or they would like, I don't know if I would say pedestalize it, but yeah, they would like fawn over my hair or they would make comments about my phenotype and stuff. And this is more in like a bougie setting. So I've noticed that when I used to watch like Cynthia G and stuff like that, her content was focused more so on the guys that are kind of like future, that archetype, kind of like this, almost like this thug archetype. And I guess that those guys are technically upwardly mobile. But when I think about my experiences with the black community, usually these are people who are more like the Cosbys. So think of that sort of black experience. And yes, even with those sorts of black guys, that was still my experience. So I do agree that culturally there are some issues. At the same time, there are going to be issues with any culture that you encounter. Another thing I forgot to mention in the last live stream was that most of those experiences were with MLS men. So mixed race black men or kind of like these light skinned black guys. I've never had a boyfriend that was like Tyrese or something like that, or that phenotype or kind of that archetype. But if I had to describe the types of black people that I've been around in terms of men, I don't know if you remember that black guy from CNN that said the N word, but I'll try to insert a picture of him. Also, I noticed a pattern where a lot of the women, a lot of the colorism content creators who were tracking black men's preferences, subconsciously, I feel like a lot of those women, they desired those men, and that's why they were tracking their preferences. And sometimes I wonder if some of those black women felt like those black men thought that they were better than them. So, you know how people say that to us as exoticals? They'll be like, oh, she thinks she's the shit. She thinks she's better than me. She has a superiority complex. Sometimes I feel like the unambiguous colorism content creators felt like these upwardly mobile black men thought that they were better than them, which I kind of would agree with a little bit in terms of how they behaved. And by the way, when I use that term bougie, or when I talk about the bougie black community, what I mean is college graduates, fraternity and sorority members. By the way, yikes on that if you've ever dated a black fraternity guy. Guys who have advanced degrees, like a bachelor's degree, master's degree, doctoral degree. I've noticed that a lot of black men that I've been around too, they love telling me about their degrees. So remember how Kevin Scamuels, he used to say that black women are like, they brag about their degrees. Okay, well, technically you could say the same thing about the men as well. Like, I'm a PhD. I've been around lots of black guys or mixed race guys that make comments like that too. But another thing that I forgot to mention in that one is a lot of those black guys that I had encountered, like in terms of dating in college and stuff, a few of them are now what I would call millionaire incels. So think of like the fresh and fit guys, that archetype. So maybe they have a successful business, or maybe they have some sort of successful podcast or something. Oh yeah, that's another thing I forgot to mention. Some of them are actual red pill podcasters, or they started their incel podcast. So this actually goes along with my decentering men talking point, that the majority of men are incels in general, because a lot of men are so centered around sex, and a lot of women, because we have standards, most women are actually going to end up charging a guy. So a lot of guys, they have been relegated to having to pay, and then most guys can't even afford to like pay a sex worker, so then they just become addicted to porn. But one thing that I forgot to talk about, I forgot to psychoanalyze the flirtatious behaviors of black men. So when I compare the flirting styles of black guys versus the flirting styles of non-black guys, I will say that they're definitely more straightforward. The African American guys. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention was when I made that live stream, I was talking mainly about African American guys. I have only ever been on a date with one Nigerian guy. That was my first and last time ever going on a date with a Nigerian guy. No offense. If you're Nigerian, sorry, not sorry. But I noticed that a lot of black guys, in my experience, whenever they would flirt, their flirting style would be something like bringing up sex. Sometimes it would be like bringing up my body, maybe bringing up my butt, bringing up like bringing up my body type or something, or like saying something about my ass. I noticed that's a very common thing amongst a lot of black guys. Another thing I noticed when psychoanalyzing their flirting style is they will interrupt you in order to like talk to you, or they will just like drop everything that they're doing so that they can come talk to you. So I will say though, it kind of depends on what your dating style and what your flirting style is in terms of what you like or don't like. Um if I had to analyze black men, another thing I would say is a lot of them, they have more difficulty expressing their emotions. A lot of them have more difficulty expressing when they have feelings for you versus if I were to compare them to non-black guys. So with non-black guys in the past, for the most part, they will just bring up marriage and they will bring up wanting to be in a relationship and stuff. They bring it up very quickly. In fact, they'll bring it up maybe before the first date or on the first date. Like they're very intentional, I've noticed, like non-black guys. And by the way, you guys already know me. I speak from more of a decentered perspective. So you're never going to see me pedestalizing one particular group of men above other men. I'm actually going to be doing the pros and cons of every race of men. I'm just talking about black men right now because you guys liked it when I talked about this. But I've got a whole series coming up on this where I'm going to be talking about the cons of every group of men. And hopefully nothing bad happens to my channel. Oh, but just in case something does happen, please follow my backup channel, Exoticals Unfiltered. But something else I forgot to say about black guys, they will call you out based on your clothing, your skin tone, or your hair. So if you're walking down the street, they might be like, hey, light skin, or like, oh, yeah, the tall light skin girl. Or they might say, hey, blue shirt, or whatever you're wearing. They may try to like call you out based on that. Something else that I can think of that I've noticed amongst black guys is that if there are a group of black guys, a lot of black guys are actually very competitive with other black men. So I know that like if I go into a group setting, let's say I go to a fitness group or something like that, I have seen black guys where they will literally start roasting each other in front of me because they're trying to embarrass the other one. I've noticed those sorts of behaviors. To be fair though, I have noticed that amongst other groups of guys, but that's something I've noticed with black guys in particular. They will start roasting each other. In some cases, they may even get into a fight. So I remember there was this one time when I happened to go to this NBA party. I don't even watch basketball, so I have no idea who's on what team. I don't know what LeBron James. I have no idea what team he plays for. I think he plays for the Miami people, but he probably doesn't. But at that time, I think he was a part of the Miami Heat or something. So I remember I went to this one NBA thing where it was kind of like this bar type of scene. So there were all black guys there and girls. And like me and my friends walked in and we were basically the only girls there. And obviously we're pretty. Exotical tax. So we were walking there and I noticed that this one guy, he was like this fat black guy. No offense if you're fat and watching this, but he was a fat black guy. And this other black guy, he was rooting for the opposite team. And they started arguing back and forth about stats. So it looked totally peaceful in there. But as soon as we kind of walked up over to where the screens were, like where you could watch the game, I noticed that this one guy in particular, it almost seemed as if he was trying to show off his knowledge about basketball stats. And he was taking it so seriously to the point where he was arguing back and forth with this other black guy. The other black guy was kind of chill, like, oh, whatever, man. Like I'm rooting for the other team. And this other black guy, he started bringing up all the stats. He literally told the guy, he was like, yeah, suck a dick. So he was becoming vulgar and like literally getting loud, low key shouting in the middle of a bar. And it almost seemed as if he was trying to assert his alpha male he wasn't a real alpha male, but it was like he was trying to come off as some sort of alpha male or something. And I remember me and my friend, we kind of looked at each other like, this is really weird. But I could tell that he was trying to show off in front of us because he kept looking over at us. And then whenever the other guy would kind of say something, he would argue back and forth with that guy and then kind of look over at us kind of to see our reaction or something. So that's something else I noticed amongst Black men. Sometimes they will start fighting with each other. I also noticed this with a guy that I talked about in the last video, one of the Black fraternity guys that I dated. He literally got into a fight, and I've noticed this actually with a lot of Black fraternity guys where they will start fighting if you get into their line while they're strolling or whatever. So it's like when they're trying to be seen by the girls, of course, because that's really what the strolling is. It's them trying to kind of show off their body. Isn't it funny how if you're a woman and you dance in the middle of a circle or something, you're a hoe and you're a slut, you're a thought, you're attention seeking. But if guys dance in the middle of a circle, which is basically what you're doing when you're strolling, you're dancing in a line, it's like a form of line dancing, then suddenly, oh, it's no problem. And then they will literally start fighting another guy if he like bumps into them or something, or if they like try to walk past, maybe they're trying to get by and these guys are like blocking that shit. Oh, another thing that I forgot to mention was actually this is the same guy. I remember this one guy, he was a part of a Black fraternity. So we went to a basketball game, and at this particular basketball game, it was actually a game where these two HBCUs were playing against each other. And there were a lot of alumni there, so it was really cool. It was really cute. You know how they play like the music where it's the music where all the fraternities and sororities, they like to stroll to that music. So this guy, he knew I was there obviously, and he was trying to get my attention. And so as soon as the music came on, I swear to God, I'm not kidding right now. Okay, so you know how at the basketball court, they have the court at the bottom, and then they have stands where it's like you're going up really high, and basically you can see it from a higher point, so like you would have to walk down a whole bunch of stairs, and you would have to look over the railing if you want to see the basketball court. Like if you want to get closer, you have to go up to the rails, then you can see the court. And I'll try to insert a picture. I swear to God, this guy was so desperate to show off in front of me to the point where he jumps over the rail. So him and these other fraternity bros, they start jumping over the fucking rail at the basketball court. First of all, you could actually hurt yourself by doing that, but they jump over the rail and then they bombard the basketball court so that they can do their strolling shit. And they were being so ratchet and rambunctious to the point where they called over the intercom. They were like, can the members of Alpha Phi Alpha please get off of the basketball court? Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity members, get off the basketball court. So the extreme showing off level, like amongst Black men, I've just noticed that it's more extreme. When I think of white guys, I've noticed a lot of white guys, they will do stuff like drinking and, with the kegs and all that. But when it comes to Black guys, I noticed some of them, they do these risky behaviors where it's like you're jumping over railing to the point where somebody could have broken their arm, you're fighting with other guys. And this is all in an attempt to get female attention. Another thing I've noticed from Black guys is negging and being argumentative. You know how they say that Black women are combative? Well, I wonder who else in that community could potentially be combative, because like the one guy at the NBA thing, he was being combative technically with another Black guy. And even if you think about these guys on podcasts, like these red pill types of guys, the most combative ones that I've ever seen actually have been Black guys. Usually the white guys, they tend to, maybe they'll block people, or, they might kind of like just stay amongst other men. But I've noticed that a lot of Black guys, they want to specifically argue back and forth with a woman, or they want to argue with other men in front of a woman. And that's kind of like their way of showing off or something. So that's something else I noticed when it comes to Black men in particular. It's kind of like a lack of conflict resolution skills, or almost like you want to argue with people to prove how smart you are. As somebody who didn't grow up in an African American community, that's not how they do it in other cultures. Like if you want to prove your intelligence, arguing back and forth like a psycho and like getting pissed off because somebody has a different political belief, that's not how you prove intelligence. But I've noticed in the Black community, It is. That is how you prove intelligence. You know, if somebody disagrees with you, you get pissed off, you start to view them as your enemy, you just start insulting that person, you start negging that person, you start calling out that person's flaws, or you bring up their personal life and stuff. I notice a lot of black men doing that, and even the black women as well. And so this whole talking point about, oh, black women are combative, it's like, well, I've seen a lot of black men being just as combative, if not more. Another thing that I've actually noticed with black men is kind of showing off their bodies a lot, or kind of like, I don't want to say sexualizing themselves, because you guys know me, I'm sex positive. Even though I practice celibacy, if I'm not in a relationship, I'm still sex positive. So I understand if you worked hard for your body, you're very in shape, and maybe it's hot outside, you know, you want to wear a sports bra, you want to have no shirt on. But I have noticed a pattern where, with black guys in particular. Okay, so there's this one guy I can think of where we went on a date. He was a biracial black guy, and this guy, it was actually at another basketball game. So we go to the basketball game, and his team wins. This guy was wearing a special shirt. I would have never guessed that he was wearing one of those special shirts where you can just rip it off. Like, you know, like the WWE wrestling and stuff where they just rip off their shirt. This guy literally stands up in the middle of the crowd and rips off his shirt like he's a stripper or some shit. So that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. I've only seen that behavior with black guys where it's like, okay, you had to go and purchase a special type of shirt that can be easily ripped off. Cause I mean, his shirt just ripped off like it was a napkin or something. So, and by the way, actually, this guy, he was a wrestler as well. So I don't know if maybe it's a part of wrestling culture. I have no idea. But he literally stands up, he rips off his shirt to kind of like show off his muscles. I've noticed that with a lot of black guys where they like to take off their shirts a lot more. You know, like if it's hot outside, if they're playing basketball. I haven't seen a lot of white guys, Indian guys, Hispanic guys taking off their shirts so often. I've seen black guys do that shit though, a lot. But then if you're a woman who's black or black adjacent, if you take off your shirt or if you're wearing a sports bra, to this day, I don't even wear sports bras and stuff when I go work out. I don't just wear a sports bra with like some short shorts, because I already know that my body is very sexualized, or I'm already viewed as quote unquote sexy. But I've noticed a lot of black men, they will actually play into this, but then they'll shame the women if they do that, of course. But I've noticed that's one of their ways of kind of trying to be flirty, or trying to like show off and show like, yeah, I'm an alpha male, you know, like I have the best body out of all the other men. I remember there was this other time where I actually went camping. So this is when I was really young, but I actually went camping, and there was a black guy there that I was talking to at the time. He never ended up becoming my boyfriend. He was unambiguous actually, and it was the same thing where he wanted to go and like talk to me about something. So he made sure that he had no shirt on and that he had his basketball shorts on. So I've just noticed this culture amongst black men where they're more body confident. So it's not a bad thing to be body confident, especially if you have a nice body. But then I've noticed the hypocrisy though, because if you're a black woman who has a beautiful body and you're body confident, then suddenly, oh no, like you're being a hoe, or like you're trying to draw attention to yourself. So I almost feel like a lot of black men are actually intimidated by the beauty of your body. If you have that black woman body type, yes, I said what I said. I call it a black woman body type because I do believe a lot of black women have kind of like maybe this hourglass or a Coke bottle shape, or even if you have an athletic shape. I've noticed a lot of black girls, they'll say, I don't have a butt or I don't have a shape. But then if you look at them, they actually do still have a really nice shape in comparison to other groups of women. Like if I were to compare Sierra's body type to like some random like white girl walking down the street, you could still kind of see a difference. And I'm not saying that to be racist, but I've noticed almost like this hypocrisy where black men, they know the value of their bodies, or they know like how attractive their body types are. But then if you're a woman with that same body type, like myself, then if you do the same thing, then it's like, oh no, that's bad. You're being a hoe. Or like, let's say you post some pics on Instagram or something, or I don't know, on a dating app, whatever. You post some pictures online where you're kind of showing off your body. You're showing off your booty a little bit, or you're wearing a little crop top, a bra top. Then suddenly it's like, oh my God, you know, like I can't handle it. But then that's their way of showing off in front of you, though. Like that's their way of flirting with you. Another thing I wrote down was they bash you for not being black enough, yet still want to fuck. If you are dark skinned, or let's say they're unambiguous, bashing you for being too black, yet still want to fuck. So this is another thing I've noticed with a lot of black guys. A lot of them have been very sex centered. A lot of them have found their self esteem on their sexual desirability. I've actually noticed the pattern sometimes with some of the black women as well who don't like my channel. So just a very sexual personality, or kind of like basing your self esteem on how many people want to sleep with you, or how desirable you are in the female gaze or whatever. Another thing I've noticed is talking about preferences and stuff like that. I have noticed that conversation more so with black men and women versus other groups. I've noticed in other groups they may call it a type. They'll be like, "Oh, what's your type?" or "Am I not your type?" It's not taken as seriously. I've noticed in the black community though, whoever your preference is, whatever person you're talking to, if they are not your exact preference, then like the person is going to get really pissed off. Versus in the non-black communities, like let's say the girl's a brunette and his preference is blondes, or his type is a blonde and the girl is a brunette. Usually the girl will like, she'll either stop talking to him completely and she won't take it personally or anything. She'll be like, "Oh, okay, that's fine." Or she might be like, "Oh, okay, well, are you open to this? Or are you open to a brunette or whatever?" And then it's not a big deal. But I noticed in the black community, the whole conversation around preferences, whether it's a woman talking about her preference of wanting a wealthy man, or if it's a man talking about his preference of a body type or an age or whatever, it's like a very heated debate. I've noticed the gender war is definitely more prominent in the black community versus non-black communities that I've been around. Like that, it's actually a talking point. Literally, I'm not even kidding. I was at brunch last weekend with a couple of friends. These are bougie black people. So I'm talking attorneys, like as far as who I was having brunch with last weekend. There were a couple of attorneys there, and these are girls and guys. There were some attorneys there, some travel nurses there. As far as the guys, these are guys that like own their own businesses. A couple of the guys were actually working in the medical field too. I don't remember what positions they were working, but literally a conversation at the brunch table was like gender war talking points, or like red pill types of talking points. That's not a normal conversation that I would hear if I'm in a non-black setting, like at a brunch or something. Usually people will talk about like their dogs, or I don't know, what properties they just bought, or if they're getting married, or their families, versus, "Oh, did so and so rapper get shot by this person? And like, was it a conspiracy?" So I've noticed like the actual conversation topics are different too. But another thing I noticed in terms of black guys' flirting styles is using their talent as a way to flirt. So this is a unique thing that I've only noticed in the black community. A lot of black guys, like if he can sing, for example, he'll start singing to you. Like I've had guys start singing to me and shit. This is only if he's like a singer though. Like let's say he's a gospel singer, or if he's like in some sort of group, like some sort of church group or something where they do singing, he might start serenading you. Or if the guy can dance, like let's say you're on a date or something and there's music playing, he may pull you out of your seat to like dance with him. Or he might dance, like if there's music playing, let's say you're at an outdoor event where they have live music, or you're at some sort of concert, he might start dancing. So that's another thing that I've noticed that's like kind of different about black men versus versus non-black men. A lot of non-black guys, they'll just do like a fist pump or something like that, and then it's done. But I guess it kind of depends on the flirting styles that you like or dislike. But I feel like part of the reason why a lot of black men or women actually will start dancing, because I have friends, well, acquaintances and former friends, who would literally start twerking and shit as a way to draw attention to themselves. But I feel like if you're going to start dancing, it just has to be a dancing environment. Like I will dance too if there's actually music playing, or if it's an environment where there's a dance floor or something, then yes. But if it's just a random nice restaurant, no, I'm not going to start shaking my ass randomly. But I've noticed that pattern where that's one of the flirting styles. Like they may start dancing and stuff. So in some cases, yeah, that might be cute, right? It's cute in the beginning. It seems kind of like romantic in the beginning, or like, very alluring, and it might lure you in. But as far as the follow through after that, I feel like it's kind of sketchy. Another thing I'm going to say, and I'm probably going to get canceled for this, but I don't really care. There seems to be a difference between the Southern black men that I've been around versus the other black guys. So if he's like a Southern bougie biracial black guy, or multiracial black guy versus a bougie West Coast or East Coast or Midwest black guy, I've noticed that there's a difference, at least with me. I've noticed that Southern black guys, they do better. Southern multiracial black guys, Southern biracial black guys, they tend to do better with me in terms of dating because of the culture. So I feel like a part of this could be because the South is kind of like the Bible Belt, and I have a very strong Christian background. I'm not a Christian anymore, but I do feel like my Christian background really has helped me to have kind of a stronger sense of self esteem. It kind of helped me to develop some form of class. So even though I talk my shit about Christianity, I still do have respect for all religious backgrounds because religion, at least they try to teach you some form of morals. So I have noticed that the Southern black guys, uh, honestly, I kind of put them on a higher level. I kind of put them on a higher level than the other black guys if I had to judge. Like if I had to judge based on my experiences, that's what I've noticed. I've noticed that the East Coast and the West Coast guys that I've been around who are black or black adjacent, oftentimes there's kind of more of a struggle culture. And I think part of this has to do with the really wide gaps between rich and poor on the East Coast and West Coast versus the South. In the South, I feel like there's kind of a stronger middle class. There are kind of like a lot of family values. I know that the South has some very bad history and stuff like that, but I mean, what part of America does not have bad history? So that's another dynamic that I've noticed. And also, a lot of the exoticals, you guys voted and you guys said that you liked the South, or that if you had to pick a place where you felt like your pretty privilege worked the best, or maybe your dating experience worked the best, you guys chose the South. I know that we have pretty privilege everywhere, but I'm probably going to talk about that because I actually agree. I love, 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 love the South. I love Southern culture. I feel like it benefits me a lot. So that is something else I've noticed though too. There is definitely a cultural difference between the Southern black slash MLS guys versus kind of these East Coast or West Coast guys. I've noticed it's almost as if the East Coast and West Coast guys have a harder time becoming upwardly mobile. Same thing with the Midwest guys. I have never met a guy that had generational wealth that was from the West Coast, East Coast, or Midwest, but I have met multiple black or mixed black guys from the South that had some form of generational wealth. And when I use that term generational wealth, I mean like maybe he had some properties passed down to him. Maybe his dad was a business owner. Oh, that's another thing. Father figures. I've noticed more Southern guys who had father figures versus East Coast and West Coast guys. So I don't know if that has to do with geographical location and culture, but that is a pattern that I've noticed. So don't take anything I say as like end all be all. This is just kind of anecdotal evidence. This is just what I've noticed. But yeah, that's another thing. Southern guys, a lot of them have more of a father figure. A lot of the guys that I've met who have a Southern background do tend to come. It's more likely for them to come from a two-parent home, from what I've seen, versus East Coast guys or like some West Coast or Midwest guy from like Chicago or somewhere. That's just what I've noticed. I'm not saying that there are no exceptions to the rule, but that's just my experience. Another thing I noticed about Southern black or mixed black guys is there's more of an acceptance of me being bougie. Southern multiracial black guys or monoracial black guys, they don't mind my bouginess. They don't seem to mind my bougie aesthetic. They don't seem to call me stuck up and conceited and all these crazy ass names versus like East Coast guys. Like for example, I've been around guys from like Brooklyn or whatever, somewhere on the East Coast, Philly. And I've noticed the same thing with the West Coast guys, Oakland, LA, those types of guys, they have definitely been more likely to call me names versus the Southern guys. It's almost as if they understand my archetype. And so I feel like when it comes to the Southern culture, maybe they've been more exposed to my archetype. But another thing that I've noticed though is a lot of Southern guys that I've been around, they like the way that I speak. I've noticed that Southern guys like the way that I speak, West Coast guys like the way that I speak. But as far as like Midwestern and East Coast guys, they both tend to associate the way that I speak with acting white. I've heard the most comments of you act white or you talk white. I've heard that the most from black guys from the East Coast or black guys from the Midwest, whether he's mixed black or monoracially black, versus a West Coast guy. They don't really care about how I speak, but they might still call me bougie though because of other factors like how I dress or how I carry myself. Southern guys, they don't seem to care at all. In fact, if I had to judge, I feel like I receive a lot of positive stereotypes from Southern guys. Oh my God, I do not want this to sound like I'm trying to promote Southern MLS guys or like a Southern black guy or anything. But I have noticed that though. I've noticed that I receive positive stereotypes. Maybe it's because in the South, there's kind of a stronger Creole culture. There are a lot of multi generationally mixed people that have roots in the South. I myself, my African American roots are from Louisiana. So I don't know. But that's one thing that I noticed though, in terms of like the nuances of dating. Anyway, I'm going to make another video about the South. But what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.